Freedom has a strange way of revealing itself, often in moments we least expect. For me, that moment came after a turbulent chapter in my life finally came to an end. With my divorce from Aggie finalized and the weight of our messy past lifted, I found myself standing at the edge of a new beginning. As I walked into the bar that evening, I wasn't just celebrating the end of my marriage. I was celebrating the start of something better, something that belonged solely to me. Little did I know, this night would mark the first step toward reclaiming my life, and it began with an unexpected dance under the dim lights of a roadside bar. I first met Agnes in the 9th grade, and by the time we hit sophomore year, we were practically inseparable, the quintessential high school sweethearts. We breezed through high school without a hitch, and in a move that was almost too predictable, we shared our first time together after the senior prom. Once we discovered the thrill of being intimate, it became a regular part of our relationship. By junior year, we were already talking about getting married, but we agreed to wait until after college to make it official. But college changed things, especially for Aggie. Back in high school, everyone knew we were together, and the guys respected that. No one dared make a move on her. But college was a whole new ball game. We were surrounded by students from all over, many of whom didn't know or care that Aggie was my girl. To them, she was just a beautiful, desirable woman, and they pursued her relentlessly. I was aware of it, but what could I do? Our schedules were different. We were in different majors and classes, so we mostly only saw each other in the evenings after class and when I got off work. The attention started to affect Aggie. She became more flirtatious, more outgoing. Several times I saw her walking with other guys, laughing and chatting, but I was too far away for her to notice me. I even caught glimpses of her in the cafeteria with other guys on more than one occasion. It didn't bother me at the time. I trusted her. We were a couple, in love, and planning a future together. What did I have to worry about? Aggie was stunning, so it made sense that guys would be drawn to her. But she was mine, and she reassured me of that every night when we were together. We graduated, found jobs, got married, and started what I thought would be a life of wedded bliss. For nearly 6 years, I lived in a bubble of contentment, until everything came crashing down. The revelation that shattered my world came out of nowhere. I was at work, going through some files that Molly from the mailroom had dropped on my desk. Rob had always trusted Aggie, or at least that's what he thought. Their relationship seemed stable on the surface, even as George and Wally's involvement with her continued in secret. It was only when George met Melody Martin and entered into a serious relationship with her that the pattern began to change. While George moved on, Wally continued to sleep with Aggie, unaware that he was not the only one. One day, when Wally went to Aggie's place, he discovered her already with Mike Bella and Justin Walsh. Instead of being surprised or angry, he stripped off his clothes and joined in. This routine continued until Aggie had to stop to meet Rob after his shift at Jessup's Market. Wally wasn't the only one she shared herself with. There were many others, and at times she was with more than half a dozen guys. Rob and Aggie were friends, but it wasn't as if they were inseparable. They were young, 18, and like many others at that age, they had sex on the brain. Rob had assumed that while Aggie was involved with others, their relationship wasn't all that serious. But even as they both started college, Aggie's habits didn't change. Her classes let out early, and she would disappear until Rob got off work. Wednesdays were practically an all-day marathon of sex, her behavior consistent throughout their time at school. Rob's friends were stunned when he married Aggie. They couldn't believe he was unaware of what she had been doing. Most thought he must be one of those guys who got off on his woman being with other men. Tyler even suggested they might be swingers, but no one ever saw Rob with another girl, only Aggie with other guys. It baffled them how Rob seemed oblivious to her escapades. Wally, feeling guilty, finally decided to clue Rob in. "Rob, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you need to know. Every Thursday night, Aggie has a date with Bob and Bill Howard, and on Tuesdays when you're bowling, she's with Mark Willard. There are probably others, too." Rob was stunned. He had no idea, not even the faintest suspicion. "I stopped seeing her after you got married. A single woman is one thing, but messing around with a married woman is a whole different story." As Rob drove home, his mind was spinning. Did he believe Wally? A part of him wanted to deny it. Aggie loved him. She wouldn't do that. But another part questioned why Wally would lie. Rob had to face the truth. Wally wouldn't risk their friendship or work relationship by lying about something like this. The realization was painful. Rob knew he had to do something, but what? He could maybe forgive a one-night mistake or even a brief affair, but this? A decade of betrayal? That was too much. When Aggie came home that night, he pretended to be asleep, repulsed by her touch for the first time in his life. The next morning, as Aggie made small talk over coffee, Rob's mind was already made up. He couldn't continue like this. As soon as he got to work, Rob called Felix, an old friend who was now a corporate lawyer. "Felix, I need the name of a good divorce lawyer." Felix paused, then asked, "What does that mean?" "It means," Rob replied, "that what I hoped wasn't true is true. What I thought Aggie and I had isn't real. I finally found out what she's been doing behind my back." Felix wasn't surprised. "I always wondered how you could be so devoted to her unless you were okay with what she was doing, but now it all makes sense." Rob felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over him. He had been in the dark for so long, and now that the truth was out, he knew there was no going back. The life he thought he had with Aggie was nothing but a lie, and it was time to start over, alone. Felix paused for a moment before breaking the silence. "Give Tomo a call and tell him I sent you." Taking his advice, I immediately reached out to Tomo, letting him know that Felix had recommended him. Tomo was straightforward. "I can see you today if you can be here by 1 p.m. I assured him I could make it, and I did. When I arrived, Tomo didn't mince words. He laid out my options, ranging from an amicable split to a full-blown, no-holds-barred, scorched earth strategy. He explained that while we weren't living in a fault-based divorce state, adultery was still a valid ground for ending the marriage. However, to use adultery as a basis, irrefutable evidence was necessary. Mere hearsay wouldn't cut it. "How do I get the evidence I need?" I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. Tomo reached into his desk and handed me a business card. The name on it read, Gaston Marshall, Private Investigator. "His office is just across the street," Tomo continued. "If you want, I can give him a call and see if he can meet with you right away." "Please do," I replied, desperate to get this nightmare over with as soon as possible. "Start the divorce paperwork. I'll get the evidence to you as soon as I have it." 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Gaston Marshall, who was already outlining the plan. The most challenging part of his instructions was to keep acting natural around Aggie, giving her no reason to suspect that I knew anything. "As distasteful as it may be," Marshall warned, "you need to maintain your usual routine. If you usually have sex 3 or 4 times a week, you have to continue doing that. If you're typically the one who initiates, you have to keep doing that too. But remember, you're not making love anymore. You're just going through the motions. It's crucial that she doesn't notice any changes." I left Marshall's office with a pit in my stomach, but I knew what had to be done. Back at work, I bit the bullet and called Aggie. We had a standing tradition: dinner every Friday night and breakfast every Sunday morning. When I asked if Tracy's was good for dinner, she agreed without hesitation. As I sat across from Aggie that night, picking at my veal marsala while she savored her rotini and sipped white wine, I couldn't help but think about what was happening at home. While we dined, Marshall's team was busy installing wireless cameras and listening devices throughout the house. As I took a sip of my Malbec, Marshall's words echoed in my mind. "You'll naturally want to spot the hidden cameras," he had said, "but you have to resist that urge. If she notices you searching, all our efforts could go to waste. And in the bedroom," he continued, "you'll have to act as naturally as possible, which won't be easy unless you're a born exhibitionist. The system is sound and motion activated, so you'll be on camera. Knowing that, you might be tempted to act differently, but you can't let that happen. My advice is to leave the system alone and pretend you're a star shooting a sex tape at work." After dinner, I suggested we go for a few drinks or maybe some dancing, but Aggie declined. "We need to get home," she said, sliding closer to me in the car, her hand already unzipping my pants. "Drive carefully, sweetie," she whispered seductively. As much as I tried to detach myself from the situation, it was impossible not to feel disgusted. What she was doing didn't feel special. It felt routine, something she had likely done with dozens of men over the years. Yet despite my disgust, my body betrayed me. A few minutes in, I was too caught up to resist, and by the time we pulled into the driveway, I had finished. Once inside, Aggie was eager to continue, urging me to hurry up to the bedroom. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't act natural knowing I might be on camera. I went to the spot where Marshall had told me the switch would be and turned off the system. To ensure I wouldn't forget to turn it back on later, I left my phone on the car seat as a reminder. That night, I didn't make love to Aggie. I drilled her, but even that wasn't enough for her. I had to go through the motions 2 more times before she finally let me go to sleep. The next morning, I dressed for my usual run. As I was leaving, Aggie reminded me she'd be getting her hair done and wouldn't be back until around 2 p.m. I had always found it suspicious that her hair appointments took from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m., but she always insisted it was because she spent so much time gossiping with the other regulars and often went out to lunch with them. That could very well be the truth, but after what I'd recently discovered, I was starting to think she might be meeting up with one of her lovers either before or after her appointment. On my way out, I turned the system back on, knowing it was crucial to develop the habit of ensuring the surveillance was always active when I wasn't home. The switch only controlled the cameras. The listening devices and phone tap were always on. After my run, I headed down to the basement and opened the cabinet above my workbench, where I had instructed Marshall to place the recorders. It seemed like the best location since Aggie rarely ventured into the basement and almost never went into my work area. Inside the cabinet were 2 receivers, one for the listening devices and phone tap, and the other for the DVD recorder that captured the feed from the wireless cameras. I checked the recorder for the phone tap and began to confirm my suspicions. "Good morning, love," she whispered into the phone. "Are we still on for today?" "You bet," he replied without missing a beat. "The wife took the kids to the zoo, so we've got until 6 o'clock tonight." "I wish I could stay that long," she sighed, "but I need to be home by 2. Any later and it'll be too risky." "Don't sweat it, babe," he reassured her. "Skip the hair appointment and get over here. Let's make the most of the time we have." "Sure," she agreed, though a hint of anxiety crept into her voice. "But what do I tell Rob if he asks why I've been gone so long and my hair's still a mess? I want more time with you too, baby, but we've got to work with what we've got." I froze as I recognized the voice on the other end. It was Lou, my cousin. Anger boiled up inside me as I thought about how many other members of my family she might have been with. By the time I made it back upstairs, I had just enough composure to keep it together when Aggie came home from her hair appointment. I managed to hold on to my calm for about an hour before I faked a fall down the basement stairs. "Must have pulled a muscle," I told her, clutching my back. It was the perfect excuse to avoid sleeping with her for the next few days. Monday morning, I called Aggie at work. "I'm heading out of town tomorrow," I told her. "I'll be back Friday, just in time to take you out to dinner." Of course, there was no trip. Maybe it would be 3 wasted days, but I didn't think so. I traveled for work once a month, and Aggie was always home when I made my nightly check-in call. Since my calls were pretty regular, anytime between 7 and 10 p.m., I doubted she was waiting until after I called to sneak out. If she was cheating on me as much as I suspected, she was probably doing it right in our bed while I was talking to her on the phone. That was my hope, anyway. If she was, and the cameras I'd set up caught it, I'd have the irrefutable proof my attorney needed for the divorce. That evening, Aggie tried to get close. "I need something to hold me over for the 3 nights you'll be gone," she cooed. Yeah, right, I thought to myself. Thankfully, my back was still hurting, so I had to decline. Tuesday morning, Aggie kissed me goodbye as I grabbed my suitcase. "Good luck on your trip," she said cheerfully as I headed out the door. I drove to work and put in almost a full day before leaving at 3 p.m. I parked a block away from the house, pulled out my laptop, and punched in the code Marshall had given me to activate the software on my computer. A few keystrokes later, I was listening to the recorder I'd planted on the phone line. "Hello? Hey, sexy," she said. "What's up?" "Hubby just left on a 3-day trip," she continued, her voice dripping with anticipation. You ready to spend 3 fun-filled nights with me? Does a duck walk barefoot on the beach? The voice on the other end joked. I'll take that as a yes, she giggled. I'll leave it to you to call Tony. I've got to get to work, but I'll be home by 6 o'clock. See you then. I shut down the computer, my heart pounding. I immediately called Tom Sweet, my attorney, and told him to have the divorce papers ready to serve by Thursday. I also instructed him on how I wanted it done. He warned me that doing it this way would cost more than the standard service fee, but I didn't care. Afterward, I left the neighborhood and checked into a motel on the other side of town. It had a bar next door, and I settled in for a 3-day stay. I liked the bar. It was my kind of place. A country western joint with a jukebox full of great tunes to dance to. Every night I went there, I noticed a few unattached ladies who couldn't stand to see a man sitting alone when there was music to dance to. The first night, as I nursed a long neck at the bar, a gorgeous redhead approached me. Come on, sugar, she said with a mischievous grin. They're playing our song. She took my hand, pulling me off the bar stool and onto the dance floor. As we started to waltz, she looked up at me and said, Don't get the wrong idea, sugar. I'm not trolling. I just love to dance, and you were here. Her name was Rhonda, and after the dance, she invited me to join her and her friends Laura and Shelby at their table. We danced until 10:30 before I told them I had to call it a night. Maybe we'll see you again, Rhonda said as I left. We're here 2 or 3 nights a week. I mentioned that I was staying at the motel next door, so it was likely they'd see me the next 2 nights. I went to bed in a good mood for the first time since my talk with Wally. The next afternoon at 3 o'clock, I was parked a block away from the house, watching what the wireless cameras had picked up the night before. 2 young guys, at least 6 years younger than Aggie, had joined her in the bedroom. I couldn't help but wonder if it was their youthful energy that she was after. The visuals were nothing extraordinary, though it was strange to see my wife with 2 men at once. But what really interested me was the audio. I was surprised by what I didn't hear. I expected her to ridicule me, maybe complain about my lack of skills in bed, but she never did. It was the same on Wednesday. The only time I was mentioned was when one of the guys said he wished they could get together more often. Aggie just told him she was sorry, but that I had first call on her time. She did, however, tell them they had to be out of the house by 6 o'clock in the morning. None of the neighbors are early risers, she explained, so I need you gone before they get up and see you leaving. Both Wednesday and Thursday mornings, they left right at 6 o'clock. I assumed it would be the same on Friday, so I called my attorney and had him change the serving of the papers to Friday at 5:45 a.m. Friday morning, I parked just down the street from the house. At 5:55, the front door opened, and the 2 guys stepped out. They turned to say goodbye to Aggie, who was standing just inside the doorway. That's when they saw the man standing off to the side. He stepped in front of the open door, handed Aggie the divorce papers, and then turned and walked away, leaving her and her 2 lovers staring at his back. I pulled up in front of the house, honked the horn to make sure I had Aggie's attention, then waved goodbye and drove off. I included a letter with my final words to Aggie. The letter was brief but clear. I never wanted to speak to her again unless it was in the presence of our attorneys. I didn't want to know the reasons, didn't want to hear that I was the only one she ever loved or that her affairs were meaningless. I was done with the tired excuses cheaters use when they get caught. No more hearing that it wasn't what I thought, or that our love could overcome anything. I was resolute, but of course, Aggie didn't take the hint. Just 15 minutes after I pulled away from the house, my cell phone rang. It was Aggie. I let it go straight to voicemail, along with the next 7 calls from her. When I arrived at work, I instructed my secretary, Martha, to block any calls from Aggie. As I turned to enter my office, I had another thought. I turned back to Martha and said, "One more thing. If she shows up here, tell her I'm not in. Tell her I'm out meeting a customer. Martha nodded, and a few minutes later she popped her head into my office. I talked to Iris at the front desk. If your wife shows up, Iris will call me and stall her, giving you time to slip out the side door. You can head to the cafe for a coffee until she's gone. I couldn't help but smile. Thank you, Martha. A good secretary is truly priceless. That day, Aggie called me 17 times. I didn't answer any of them. During lunch, I called my dad and brother to let them know what was happening. I asked Dad to break the news to Mom and to make sure she didn't try to convince me to sit down and work things out with Aggie. Dad said he'd try, but he knew it would be tough. Mom had always seen Aggie as the daughter she never had. As the workday came to an end, I found myself staying late. There was no rush to get home, so I decided to finish up some tasks. At 5 o'clock, Martha came by to say goodnight. By the way, she added, your wife called 5 times before noon. I told her each time that I had strict instructions not to put her through to you. I think she finally got the message because she hasn't called since. I finished up around 7 o'clock, and when I reached the lobby, Iris was gone. Hank, our night watchman, was sitting at the reception desk. He saw me and called out, "Hot time on the town tonight with the missus?" "Why would you think that?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "She's out there, waiting by your car," Hank replied. "We're getting a divorce, Hank. She wants to talk, but I don't. If she knocks on the door, don't open it. If she uses the intercom, tell her you're alone in the building and that when you came in there was a note in the log saying my car wouldn't start, so I left it in the lot. Tell her the towing company will pick it up in the morning." "No problem, Mr. Burns. Sorry to hear it. Divorces aren't any fun. I should know. I've had 2 of them." I left through the back door, circled the block, crossed the street, and headed down the alley to the back entrance of Dave's diner. Once inside, I found a seat where I could keep an eye on Aggie, who was still waiting by my car. I ordered the special and watched her while I ate. I was halfway through my dessert when she finally approached the building and pressed the call button. Hank must have followed my instructions because she quickly returned to her car and drove off. I finished my dessert, had another cup of coffee, and then headed to the bar for a couple of beers. Though the bar was buzzing with activity and a few women were clearly looking for dance partners, I kept to myself. I had my 2 beers and left, not in the mood for any further interaction. Saturday morning was busy. I spent the day taking care of things I should have handled before serving Aggie the divorce papers. I just hoped I wasn't too late and that she hadn't done anything drastic. I went to the bank, emptied our joint accounts, and cleared out my personal belongings from the safe deposit box. I left all of Aggie's things behind, but I did take off my wedding ring and dropped it in the box for her to find. Afterward, I hit the Waffle House for breakfast. While eating, I canceled our joint credit cards, leaving me with my Visa and American Express, both in my name only. Aggie had her own cards, but at least I'd stopped her from running up any more charges on the joint accounts. When I was done with breakfast, I drove back to the motel, parked my car, and called for a cab to take me to the nearest Avis rental location. I rented the cheapest car they had and returned to the motel. I spent the afternoon lounging by the pool, reading a book, and trying to unwind. Later that evening, I turned on my cell phone to check for messages. There were 9, all from Aggie. I deleted them without listening and turned the phone off again. I had a light dinner and then headed to the bar where a live band was playing. The place was packed. I found a seat at the bar and ordered a beer. I'd only had a few sips when I felt a tug on my shirt. I turned to see Rhonda standing there. "Hey, cowboy," she said with a playful smile. "Why are you sitting here when there's a seat at our table just for you?" "I didn't see you in the crowd," I replied, surprised. To be honest, if I had, I wouldn't have intruded. I didn't want to assume anything. "Nonsense," Rhonda said. "Come on, join us." I got up and followed her to a table where Laura and Shelby were sitting. I greeted them and then joked, "There's something wrong with this picture. 3 gorgeous women sitting at a table alone, and you had to come get me? That just ain't right." Laura laughed. "Oh, we get plenty of attention, but it's usually from guys who think we're here for a one-night fling just because we're out without our husbands. It's not like that at all. We're not here to cheat on our husbands, we just want to dance." Unfortunately, only a couple of guys seem to get that. The rest? They think they're God's gift to women, and we have to fend them off. But after the other night, we know you're one of the good guys. Consider this your open invitation. Whenever you come in and we're here, you're welcome to join us. I couldn't help but smile at Rhonda's words. It's none of my business, and feel free to tell me that if you want. But I have to ask, why? Why are three gorgeous married women spending time in a place like this without their husbands? It's a fair question, Rhonda replied with a grin. Laura's husband is in the Army Reserve, and his unit got sent to Afghanistan. She was going nuts cooped up at home alone, so we decided to get her out. Shelby's husband works nights, and mine is a long-haul trucker who's gone a lot. So the three of us banded together to keep each other company. We love to dance, and here we are. What about you? We noticed you had a ring on last time, but now it's gone. I paused, letting out a sigh. I served my wife with divorce papers yesterday morning, took the ring off and left it where she'd find it. Does that mean you're on the hunt now? Rhonda asked, a bit of concern in her eyes. Not in the least, I said firmly. The grounds for the divorce were adultery, and I have no intention of doing anything that she could use as ammunition for a countersuit. Good, Laura chimed in. We need a safe dancing partner. The rest of the evening flew by. We danced until closing time, with me taking turns with each of them and occasionally sharing them with the few guys they gave the nod to. Sunday was quiet, a day by the pool with a book. But Monday came, and I drove the rental car to work, hoping Aggie wouldn't see it and think I was out of town again. Maybe she'd stay away. The week passed with anywhere from 6 to 10 calls a day from her, all of which I ignored. Twice she caught me off guard by calling from numbers I didn't recognize, and both times I hung up as soon as I heard her voice. Every night after dinner, I'd stop by the bar for a beer or two. Rhonda, Laura, and Shelby were there on Wednesday and Friday, so I joined them, dancing until 10 on Wednesday and staying until closing on Friday. I figured by Saturday Aggie would have gotten the hint, so I returned the rental and drove my own car to work on Monday. Big mistake. When I left the office that day, there she was, parked next to my car. As soon as she saw me, she got out and blocked my driver's side door. "We need to talk, Rob," she said as I approached. I ignored her, trying to get into my car, but she wasn't having it. She moved to block the door again. "Come on, Rob, you need to let me explain." I didn't want to hurt her, but I was done playing her games. I pushed her out of the way and she stumbled, almost falling. By the time she regained her balance, I was in the car. I rolled down the window and looked at her with as much calm as I could muster. "You need to go back and read the letter that came with the divorce papers, Aggie. I will not talk to you unless my attorney is present. And even then, all I'm discussing is the details of the divorce." "But I don't want a divorce, Rob," she pleaded. "And I don't want you, Aggie. We're done. Accept it, because I'm not changing my mind." With that, I rolled up the window and drove off, leaving her standing there. By Tuesday, it was clear Aggie wasn't taking my refusal lightly. As I walked up to my car after work, two guys suddenly appeared and grabbed me, each holding one of my arms. I recognized them. They were the same two guys who had been with Aggie in our bedroom. "Don't do anything stupid, old man, and you won't get hurt," one of them said. "Miss Aggie says she wants to talk to you, and you're being obstinate. So we're taking you to her, easy way or hard way, but you're coming with us." I sized them up quickly. They were maybe 6 or 7 years younger than me, and they clearly thought I was some soft old guy in a suit and tie. But I figured I could take them. Surprise was on my side. If I could get one out of the way, I was pretty sure I could handle the other. Besides, a scuffle would draw attention, and that would put an end to their little kidnapping plan. But then I thought about it. Do I really want to escalate this? If Aggie was willing to go this far just to talk, what would she try next if I sent these two back to her bruised and battered? I decided to play it cool. I let them push me into my car, sitting between them with my briefcase on my lap as they drove me to the house. They escorted me inside where Aggie was waiting. She told them to sit me down and make sure I stayed put. "We are not getting a divorce," she declared. I started to stand, but the two guys pushed me back down, keeping a firm grip on me. One of them whispered, "You'll stay put if you know what's good for you." Aggie continued, "We're going to stay married, Rob, but there will be a few changes in how we live. I'm sorry you found out about my medical condition, but now that you know, you're going to have to live with it." I love you. Believe it or not, I do. And I'm not letting you go. Medical condition? What medical condition? I asked, confused. I'm a nymphomaniac, Rob. I've been one since high school, and you unleashed it when you took my virginity. I stared at her in disbelief. That's nonsense. There are medications that can treat that. Yes, there are, she said almost casually. And I've tried them all. They make me sluggish and stupid, and I refuse to live my life as a vegetable. Besides, I like being a nympho. I love sex, and you know that. I hardly ever leave you alone, and when I do, it doesn't hurt you. I love you, and I spoil you rotten. So what if I let someone else have what you can't use? If you could stay hard 24/7, I wouldn't need anyone else. But you can't, and I need it. So I give the excess to others. But I don't love them. I love you, and I always come home to you. She paused, letting her words sink in. Here's how it's going to be. I've written up a post-nuptial agreement where you agree to my having as many lovers as I need to keep my sanity. If you decide to leave the marriage and walk away with nothing, that's your choice. But what do I get in return, aside from a wife who's been unfaithful? You get the same loving wife you've had for the past 6 years, she said. You know, deep down, you've always considered those years perfect. You thought our marriage and our life were perfect, even though I was doing what you now seem to have a problem with. The only issue now is your ego. Someone else has touched something you always believed was exclusively yours, but you need to accept that life can continue just as it has for the last 6 years. This doesn't mean you're not enough for me. You're a wonderful lover, Rob, and you always leave me fully satisfied. You just can't give me as much as I need. I paused and looked at her, frustration bubbling up inside me. I'll tell you what, Agnes, I said, knowing she hated being called by her full name. I'll sign your agreement, but only if we make a few changes. Her expression hardened. What kind of changes? For starters, you don't ever sleep with me on the same day you sleep with someone else, and we sleep in separate bedrooms. I can't do that, she replied, her voice quivering just slightly. I need you, Rob. I need you in bed with me. Why can't you get it through your head that I love you? I don't want to lose you. That's okay, Agnes, I said, standing up slowly. If you can't make those changes, then I didn't want to sign your so-called agreement anyway. Wait, she blurted out, panic flickering in her eyes. All right, I'll make the changes and we'll work on getting things back to normal later. She hurried over to the computer to make the edits. I tried to get up, but the 2 goons she'd hired to babysit me forced me back into my chair. I need to use the bathroom, I said, glaring at them. Miss Aggie said you're to stay put until she says so. So unless she changes her mind, you better get comfortable, one of them sneered. 5 minutes later, Aggie returned with the updated document in hand, ready for me to sign. She held out a pen, but I didn't take it. Your guys won't let me get up, I said. She nodded to them, and they finally let me stand. I walked over to her, grabbed the pen, and then paused. Not that I don't trust you, Agnes, but I think I'll give it a read just to make sure it says what you claim. I skimmed through the document and then, without a word, I tore it into pieces and tossed them in her face. What the hell are you doing? She shouted, her voice dripping with outrage. I turned my back on her and headed for the door, but she screamed, "Stop him!" Before I knew it, her henchmen were coming for me. The first one got too close and I swung my briefcase hard at his head. The impact was solid and he dropped to the floor. The second guy, startled by what had just happened, stumbled backward, but before he could react, I punched him square in the mouth. He staggered, and I didn't hesitate. I kicked him in the groin with everything I had. He crumpled to the floor in agony. Even with them down, I wasn't stupid. I knew I had to keep them there, so I started kicking, landing blows to their ribs, their groins, their heads, until Aggie screamed, "Stop, Rob, or I'll shoot you!" I looked up to see her pointing a gun directly at me. "Go ahead, shoot me," I said, my voice cold and calm. "Do it!" I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. "My wife is threatening me with a gun," I said, giving them my address. The operator told me to stay calm and not provoke her, that police were on the way. "Thanks, Agnes," I said with a bitter smile. "This is going to make the divorce a lot easier. Once the police see what's going on here, you'll be the one behind bars." "Don't be stupid, Rob," she scoffed. "When the cops show up, you'll be the one getting arrested. You came here, found me talking with 2 friends, and flew into a jealous rage. It'll be your word against the three of us, and we're fully clothed, mind you. You'll be charged with assault." "Oh, Agnes, I think you've miscalculated," I replied, my voice laced with mock sympathy. "Hank saw those two guys pick me up from work, and Joyce, our lovely neighbor, watched them escort me into the house." "My story?" "You had me brought here against my will, and when I tried to leave, you ordered your goons to stop me. And when that didn't work, you pulled a gun on me. Maybe I'll spend a night in jail, but once my witnesses speak up, it'll be you who's sitting in a cell. And I definitely won't be bailing you out." Her expression faltered for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. "We'll see about that." The police arrived soon after, and just as I predicted, Aggie stuck to her story. She and her friends lied through their teeth, and I was taken to jail. But I had planned for that. I called my attorney first thing in the morning, explained the situation, and had him get in touch with a private investigator to retrieve footage from security cameras outside my office and from Joyce's house next door. The tapes showed everything. Barry and Tony restraining me, Aggie pulling the gun, and most damning of all, her admitting she planned to lie to the cops. When Aggie arrived at court for my bail hearing, she was the one arrested. By the end of the day, both Barry and Tony were also behind bars. I refused to post bail for Aggie, and her parents couldn't scrape together the money to get her out. Her lawyer called, asking if I would put the house up as collateral for her bail. I laughed and hung up. I moved back into the house, changed all the locks, and filed a restraining order against her. Things had gone from bad to worse for Aggie, and she only had herself to blame. Barry and Tony quickly realized that facing serious jail time wasn't worth it. Both of them decided to cut their losses and took plea deals, leaving Aggie to fend for herself. During the trial, Aggie insisted that she never would have pulled the trigger on me. According to her, she was just trying to stop me from attacking Barry and Tony before I ended up killing one of them and landing myself in jail. The jury watched the tape closely and weighed her words, especially when she professed her love for me. They concluded that she was probably telling the truth when she claimed she was only trying to prevent me from doing something irreversible. In the end, Aggie was acquitted of the felony menacing charge, but she wasn't off the hook completely. The jury found her guilty of unlawful restraint, making false police reports, and a few other minor offenses. The judge handed down a sentence of 9 months in county jail and 1,000 hours of community service. While she was serving her time, our divorce was finalized without much hassle. The only significant thing I lost in the process was 20% of the equity in our house. Once the settlement was complete, I transferred the money into her account and decided to start my new chapter of life. To mark the beginning of my newfound freedom, I headed straight to the bar next to the motel where I'd been staying. Luck was on my side that night. Rhonda and Shelby were there. I invited them to join me in celebrating my first day as a free man. Laura, unfortunately, wasn't there because her husband had just returned from the war, and they were busy catching up and rekindling their relationship. As we settled in, Rhonda asked me with a playful smile, "So why do you want to celebrate with us?" I grinned and replied, "Well, I'm taking a bit of a gamble here. I noticed Laura's wedding ring the last time I saw her, and Shelby's got hers on too. But Rhonda, I see you're not wearing any rings, and there aren't any tan lines that suggest you ever did. So I'm guessing there's no long-haul trucker waiting for you at home. Plus," I added with a wink, "I've always had a thing for fiery redheads." Shelby burst out laughing. "You're so busted, girl!" Without missing a beat, I grabbed Rhonda by the hand, pulled her off her chair, and led her onto the dance floor. The night was young, and I was finally free. Free from Aggie, free from the drama, and ready to embrace whatever came next.